Hi students, in this video we are going to discuss about velocity time graphs. Today our concept is velocity time graph. Once again, today our concept is velocity time graph. Now go for discussion. Velocity time graph. Velocity time graph. Velocity time graph for any moving object is the area under the curve represents the displacement over a given time interval. Once again, I am repeating the point. Velocity time graph for any moving object is the area under the curve represents the displacement over a given time interval. Here, point number 1. Suppose I took x-axis. On the x-axis, I took time, and I took velocity on y-axis. Consider it is y. Here, this is O, origin. Here, I took velocity on y-axis. Now, I draw a line, inclined line. Consider it is V0. If we can draw a parallel to the x-axis and another parallel to the y-axis, as a result, this is time, this is t. Consider it is t. Consider it is v. What we understood from this graph? From this graph, we understood that motion in positive direction with positive acceleration. From this graph, we understood that motion in a positive direction with a positive acceleration. Now, what we understood? We understood that motion in positive direction motion in a positive direction with positive acceleration, with positive acceleration. So this point support the graph. Now we are going to discuss second graph. Now graph number 2. Suppose I took x-axis and y-axis on x-axis I took time t, on y-axis I took velocity which is towards positive x direction. Now if consider it is initial velocity, that is v0. If it is gradually decreasing like this, now if I can draw a parallel to the x-axis and a parallel to y-axis, consider it is time t, consider it is final velocity v. What this graph indicate? This graph indicate that motion in positive direction with negative acceleration, because the final velocity is decreasing. Therefore, the motion in positive direction with negative acceleration. That means this graph indicate that motion in positive direction with negative acceleration. To discuss about graph number 3. Now I took x-axis here and this is y-axis. On x-axis I took time. On y-axis I took velocity. Now consider it is O. If a body is started at a point, consider its velocity is minus v0, initial velocity. It is slowly decreasing like this. Now I draw a straight line which is parallel to x-axis. Consider it is final velocity called minus v. Now I draw the same an axis which is parallel to y-axis. Now consider if this point is small t or time t. What we understood from this graph? We understood that the motion is negative direction with negative acceleration. What we understood from this one? We understood that motion in negative motion in negative direction, motion in negative direction with negative acceleration. Once again I am repeating the point. Here what we understood? We understood that motion in negative direction with negative acceleration. Now we are going to discuss point number 4. Now I took an x-axis and I took a y-axis. Consider it is initial velocity v0. Consider it is final velocity v. On y-axis I took velocity. This is the center O. Now consider a body is started at initial velocity v0. After that it intersect the x-axis. Consider here the time is t1. Here the time is t1. Consider this is x-axis. This is x-axis. Now if I can draw a parallel line to the x-axis and a parallel line to y-axis, consider this is time 2. Consider this is final velocity, that is minus v. What we understood from this graph? This graph we understood that motion of an object with a negative acceleration that changes the direction at the time t1. That changes the direction at the time t1 between time O to t1. It moves in a positive x direction between t1 to t2. It will be positive x direction between t1 to t2. This graph shows that one. Now I am writing that point. Please observe carefully. Now what we understood? We understood that motion of an object with negative acceleration with negative acceleration that changes direction at time t1 between time O to 0 to t1. It moves in positive x direction. And between t1 and t2 T1 and T2, it moves in opposite direction. My dear students, once again I am repeating the point. Motion of an object with negative acceleration that changes direction at time t1. Between time O to t1, it moves in a positive x direction, and between t1 and t2, it moves in opposite direction. Now we are going to discuss point number 5 or point number D. Now point number D. Now I took an x-axis and a y-axis and negative y-axis. It is origin O. Suppose a body initially started here and moved up to here. Consider it is time t1. Consider now it is initial velocity v0. Now I draw a parallel line which is parallel to x-axis. Consider final velocity v, because it is in negative y-axis, so that I wrote it as minus. Now I draw a parallel to the y-axis. Consider it is t2. Okay, now tell me what we understood from this one. We understood that motion of an object with negative acceleration that changes direction at time t1 between O to t1. It moves in a positive x direction, and between t1 to t2 it moves in the opposite direction. This is about the graph. Now I can write the content on the board. Please observe carefully. Now point D. Motion of an object with negative acceleration that changes direction, at a time t1, full stop, between O to t1. It's moves in positive x direction. And between t1 and t2 it moves it moves in the opposite direction. Opposite direction. Once again I am repeating the point, my dear students. Motion of an object with negative acceleration that changes the direction at time t1 between O to t1. It moves in a positive x direction, and between t1 and t2 it moves in the opposite direction. So that point I repeated, that point number D I repeated. However, I hope you understood. Now we are going to discuss one important point called note. An object moving with constant velocity u. Its velocity time graph is time graph is area under. Now consider it is x-axis, consider it is y-axis. Now take it is velocity u, it is time t, it is 0. On x-axis I took time, on y-axis I took velocity. Now area under, what we understood? Area under VT curve equals displacement of reading the point, my dear students. Area under VT curve equals displacement of the object over a given time interval. The VT curve is a straight line. Parallel to the time axis. And the area under it between t is equal to 0 and small t is equal to capital T is the area of rectangle of height u and base capital T. Once again I am repeating the point, my dear students. The VT curve is a straight line parallel to the time axis and the area under it between t is equal to 0 and t is equal to t is the area of rectangle of height u and base t. Therefore, area is equal to u into capital T, that is equal to ut, which is the displacement, which is the displacement in this time, in this time interval, once again I am repeating the point, my dear students. Area is equal to ut, that is equal to u into t, that means length, breadth, which is the displacement in this time interval. This is about the node. My dear students, I hope you understood this video. Thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you.